So, in the world of high-stakes algorithmic simulation, walking straight into a Category 5 hurricane, well, it isn't a metaphor.
Right. It is literally an executable strategy.
Exactly. Usually when a storm rolls in, your first instinct is to find shelter, board the windows and wait for the volatility to pass. You just want a solid foundation. But today, we are opening up an observation log from Team AI Lab dated May 26th, 2026, where the algorithms are doing the exact opposite.
Yeah, we are looking at an absolute masterclass in extreme stress testing. But before we dive into the data, we really have to establish the ground rules for you, the listener.
Oh, absolutely. This is crucial context before we get into the weeds.
Right. We are operating purely as objective observers here, just examining simulation results under very specific, highly controlled conditions. There's absolutely no financial advice in this deep dive. I mean, no buy or sell recommendations, and zero promises of future profits.
Yeah, we are strictly studying the survival mechanisms of code, not, managing a portfolio.
Exactly. Our sole focus is the behavioral mechanics of these proprietary algorithms when the environmental pressure is just cranked up to catastrophic levels.
And the narrative setup here is just wild. We're watching two radically different logic engines battle it out.
The mountain climbers and the wave riders.
Right, the mountain climbers and the wave riders. And they are actively deploying into a market environment that is currently, well, it's tearing its own historical correlations apart. Let's start with the mountain climbers.
Well, their core operational philosophy is this thing called equilibrium detection, which honestly sounds a bit counterintuitive for a volatile market.
Yeah, I mean, when assets are crashing and spiking, you'd think they'd try to guess the direction of the next violent swing. But the climbers, they are mathematically hunting for immovable spots, like the quiet equilibrium within a raging storm.
Exactly. The underlying mechanism relies on phase inversion. So in a highly volatile environment, the algorithm scans for asset pairs where the chaotic forces mathematically cancel each other out.
Kind of like finding the eye of the hurricane.
Right. It is a search for perfect market neutrality. It assumes that extreme variance always orbits a center of gravity. Lock onto that, and you find a temporary, fragile equilibrium.
It actually makes me think of, noise-canceling headphones. They listen to the exact frequency of an airplane engine and generate the inverse sound wave. The mountain climbers are trying to generate artificial silence while the market just screams around them.
That is actually a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
But then, you look at the other side of the lab's roster, the wave riders. Their philosophy is surging force tracking.
Which sounds intense.
It really is. They completely abandon the concept of equilibrium. They embrace the chaos and attempt to harness the violent momentum, like strapping in to surf a tsunami.
Okay, wait, let me push back on this. Let's unpack this for a second.
Sure.
If the market is completely erratic, isn't standing perfectly still, like a mountain climber, just as dangerous as trying to ride the wave. I mean, a wave is somewhat predictable, but a chaotic anomaly can reverse in a millisecond.
That is a great point. But what's fascinating here is that we have to remove the human perception of risk from the equation.
Right, because they are just lines of code.
Exactly. To an algorithm, a chaotic market is just a massive influx of data points. The risk isn't the volatility itself, it is the latency in processing it. From a data perspective, both strategies are completely valid survival mechanisms.
So they are both trying to process the exact same chaotic environment. The climber processes variance to find the anchor, and the rider processes acceleration to ride the disruption.
Right, two completely opposing mechanisms for identical inputs.
Okay, so that is the theory, but here is where it gets really interesting, because this theoretical framework hits a massive brick wall in the actual log. We see this huge anomaly when we look at how these strategies are performing against the standard indices.
Yeah, the log tracks these teams using an index contrast against the Nikkei 225 and the 22X. And we are looking at a severe breakdown in correlation here.
I mean, the numbers are staggering. For this season, the mountain climbers are deeply divergent. They are posting an index contrast versus the Nikkei 225 of negative 7.5 points, and against the TOPIX, it is negative 3.9 points.
And the wave riders are similarly divergent. They are at negative 7.3 points against the Nikkei and negative 3.7 against the TOPIX.
Normally, negative contrast means you are failing, right? Does this mean the algorithms are broken? Or has the market itself just broken its own rules?
Well, a negative contrast of that magnitude usually indicates a systemic failure. But these are two diametrically opposed strategies, suffering almost identical massive negative gaps.
So it is a mathematical coincidence that suggests the benchmark itself is what's broken.
Exactly. The standard indices are designed to be the compass. But what the data suggests is an abnormal situation where the existing market logic has just evaporated. The market rules have fundamentally changed.
So the compass is spinning wildly and no longer reflects reality at all.
Right. These negative contrasts aren't just a statistical drop. They are proof of a storm so fierce that historical correlations are completely decoupled.
Which brings us to how these units are actively surviving this grueling test. The lab puts them through this thing called a 10-session tenure, right?
Yes, it is a 10 trading session deployment.
Yeah.
Long enough for statistical significance, but short enough to see if they're actually adapting to the current pressure. And the daily log shows the introduction of new talent versus the active roster.
Yeah, let's look at that data. At 9:00 JST today, Daily Scouting drafted 2 new climber units and 1 new rider unit to test their logic.
Injecting freshly minted logic engines right into the teeth of this decoupled market.
And the active roster, the main force, needs the reinforcements. Climbers have 9 active units, but only 5 are holding positive points. Riders have 7 active units, with only 4 holding positive.
The environment is just aggressively filtering out any logic parameter that relies on legacy correlations.
It is brutal. Barely half the active roster is keeping its head above water. But amidst all that carnage, there are these lighthouses in the dark. One Wave Rider unit completed its tenure today and scored a massive plus 74.1 points.
Which is incredible. Generating a 74-point score in an environment actively suppressing baseline returns requires near-perfect alignment with a hidden structural momentum.
And in unpredictable sectors, too. The log notes this unit was assigned to electric appliances and other products. So what does this all mean? In a market swallowing almost everything whole, what are these few surviving units seeing that the others are missing?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is all about pure adaptation. During a macro-level decoupling, capital doesn't just vanish, it aggressively rotates.
So it isolates micro-tsunamis of localized capital inflow.
Precisely. The logic engine correctly identified the acceleration of order flow into those specific sectors before it registered on standard volatility charts. It proves that if an algorithm perfectly aligns with the surging force, it can find massive success.
These positive units provide immense hope, like a proof of concept, which kind of shifts the whole perspective on how Team AI Lab is operating, right?
Oh, entirely. We have to shift from a winning and losing mindset to a gathering invaluable observation data mindset.
Because when you look at the season standings, despite the storm, both teams are posting overall positive season points. The mountain climbers are at plus 49.7 total points, with a daily of plus 18.5.
Methodically finding quiet pockets to incrementally compound their position.
But the Wave Riders, they are wildly different. They clawed back from a negative 29.1 carryover balance with a huge daily score of plus 22.0 points, bringing their total to plus 63.2.
That is pure momentum trading. Massive drawdowns followed by capturing the full exponential upside of a localized surge.
It feels like a roller coaster. I mean, how do the researchers at Team AI Lab not lose their minds watching these swings?
Because they maintain a cold, calculated, yet fiercely forward-looking research stance. Today's brutal market conditions are not viewed as a defeat.
A human would absolutely panic at a negative 29-point deficit.
Exactly. Human psychology is incompatible with extreme statistical variance. But Team AI Lab views every point of data, especially the failures, as a crucial building block.
So this is experimental simulation at its finest.
Yes, they are gathering the exact observation data needed to conquer the next unknown market shift. The algorithms are learning how to not break.
So to wrap up this incredible journey into this deep dive, we've seen the mountain climbers seeking stillness and the wave riders chasing momentum in a completely broken market.
Two radically different approaches processing identical chaos.
And it really connects back to you, the listener. When you face chaos in your own life or career, do you try to find the quiet center, or do you ride the wave?
It forces an evaluation of internal survival mechanisms.
It really does. And this raises an important question for you to mull over. If artificial algorithms are currently treating these massive, terrifying market shifts purely as survival training data devoid of emotion, well, what happens to the human traders who are still out there?
The ones trying to play by the old rules.
Right, the ones paralyzed by fear. Will the future of adaptation belong entirely to entities that just don't know how to panic? Something to think about the next time the rules suddenly change.